Good evening to all the participants. Am I visible? Am I visible? I need a confirmation from at least one of you.
Yes, ma'am. You are audible and visible, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Now, good evening, everyone. Before I start my session, I have two requests. One is that because we are all on the same platform, I request everyone to individually take responsibility of keeping yourselves on mute. The second thing is that please do not type any good evening messages on the chat box because that also comes on the screen. And this is being recorded right now. This session is being recorded. So these are the two requests from my side. Having said that, I would like to thank Dr. Vijay Kumar, first of all, for inviting me today for this 5-day STTP session for the Crescent family, and also for introducing me so nicely. So having said that, first what I'll do is I'll turn on my presentation. Give me a few seconds here. Okay. Before I start again, I would like a confirmation whether my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Your screen is visible.
And thank you. And also, Dr. Vijay Kumar, please make sure my my face is also not visible while the recording is on. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. So as Sir has already mentioned, today I'll be talking about some of the newer areas of research, not only in literature, but also in language. But before I start, I would also like to mention that I'm predominantly a language teacher. I do not have a lot of expertise in literature, but I did do a little research to come up with some of the areas that might possibly be useful for students who are looking into doing research in literature. Okay, so in the next slide, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the flow of the session, and I'm going to outline the subtopics that I'm going to be covering today. The first subtopic that I'll be taking up is the 4 U's of research. In the slides ahead, I'll explain what I mean by the 4 U's of research. The next point I'll be taking up it is what will not be considered as research. A lot of research work goes around, but most of them are actually not worth calling research. So we will be looking at the aspects, which define good research and the things that, stop your work from being a good research work. The third point I'll be talking about that it's time for a change in perspective. Somehow we Indians are, frozen in time. We have not moved beyond a certain topic, certain topics in certain areas. So today I would like to show you the urgent need for a change in our perspective, because we are way behind in terms of research as compared to the other countries of the world. And the last point that I'll be taking up, which is the prime focus of today's webinar, is about the upcoming areas of research, both in English literature and in language. So coming to the first subpoint, I'm going to be talking about the 4 U's of research. Now, these 4 U words, you will not find it anywhere on the internet because I coined them. And the first one I'm going to be talking about is that research should be unique. That means your findings should be completely new, it should be novel, and it should not be a copy, it should not be a repetition, it should not be a summarization of someone else's work. So there has to be the novelty factor, the originality, and the uniqueness is what defines good research, the very first parameter of good research. The second point, the word that I'm going to use is useful. Now, if you're spending your time doing research, then your findings should be useful to the world at large. Your findings should throw some light at an existing problem and try to find a solution to the problem. So the usefulness, the utility of research is the second parameter that defines good research. The third parameter, I've called it upward. Now, I tried looking for a word with you, but I couldn't find anything, so I had to settle for the word upward. What I mean by upward is that your finding should be additional to the existing level of knowledge which is already there. So if the existing level of knowledge is I, then your research should be I plus 1. The plus 1 would be your contribution to the world. So the knowledge that you're providing should be up and above or up and beyond the existing level of knowledge, and that's why I'm calling it upward. And the fourth point is that your research should be universal. Now, what I mean by universal is that if you publish your research, whether in the form of a thesis or you publish it in the form of an article, it should be acceptable not only in your university, in your city, in your country, but it should be acceptable worldwide. Everybody who reads through your work should be willing to accept it as good research, and it should be helpful at the end of the day. So these are the 4 U's which I feel defines good research. Now, when we're talking about good research, we also need to look at what is not good research. So in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about what stops your work from being called a research work. Now, the first one is that every research, the starting point of every research should be a question. If you have a question in mind and you want to find an answer, what you're engaging in necessarily is research. So if you look at a problem, you want to find a solution to the problem, and you ask yourself, how can I go about finding a solution? What you're doing is you're getting into research. So the least a good research should have is that it should have a question at the starting point, and it should be able to answer that question. If it cannot answer any question, it is no research at all. The second point is that I have seen a lot of conference papers, a lot of journal articles where, researchers, scholars, what they're doing is they're going to different sources, different journals, picking up the work of other people, paraphrasing it, they're summarizing it, and they're passing it off as a research work. Now, if you're just doing a review of other people's work without adding anything of your own, without adding any perspective of your own, any contribution of your own, then again it fails to be research work. And the third point is that if you're merely transporting information from one location to another, with Google at our fingertips, what we do is we can access a lot of different databases. We have, e-journals, we have e-libraries. So what we do is with a little bit of referencing work here and there, we simply take material from online sources, put it in a hard copy, and we try to present it. So what we are merely doing is transporting information from one platform to another. Now, if you can access that information, everybody else can access it too. So you just picking it up, summarizing, and presenting will not make your work research work. So these three things we have to keep in mind when we are looking at research. Now, having said that, I'm coming to the third point that I'm going to make is that it's time for change in our perspective. Now, I might be saying a few things which some of you might not like. It's a bitter truth, but it is something that we need to accept, is that we find it very difficult to change from a past habits to newer habits. But at times, it's a necessity. You will see a lot of teachers from the older generation, they cribbed and they cried when they had to go online to do their teaching. But today, it is the way of life, and it is going to continue to be so like this. So it is important to change our perspective and go hand in hand with the changing times. So let me just talk about some of the problems we Indians have. One is that the British people left our country about 74 years back, Are we still suffering from the colonial hangover? Our syllabi for all the different universities has not changed much. We are still into the old classics. We are still into modern English, postmodernism. At the most, what we have done is we have moved out of the colonial time to the post-colonial time. So then we feel very happy about ourselves that, okay, we are looking into Black writing, we are looking into marginalized writing, we are looking into, Dalit writing, but that is not merely enough, because now we need to look beyond racism, we need to look beyond skin color, we need to look beyond marginalization, and we need to look beyond cultural boundaries, because we have bigger problems threatening us. And it's good in a way that this COVID pandemic happened, because it's a wake-up call for us to realize that when we are fighting for our survival, we are no more Indians, we are no more British, we are no more American, we are no more Canadians. We are just human beings, puny human beings, trying to fight a force which is much bigger than us. So what we need to do is, we need to step out of the past and we need to look towards the future. And this is what I mean by time for change in perspective. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is the need for bridging the gap. Now, every time I go into the English teaching community, I'm amazed by the fact that there are two very distinct camps. We have the literature teachers, very vocal about the importance of literature for English students. And then we have teachers like me who are language teachers. And again, we are vehemently, going about with the propaganda about how language is the need of the hour. You earn your bread through language, and language is there in everything. So I'm trying to claim the superiority of language teaching. Literature teachers are trying to, claim a superiority for literary works. But what we fail to understand, that there would be no literature without language. You need to have a basic hold over the language, and then only can you produce some amount of literature, or you are in a condition where you can appreciate good literature. But the thing is, if language helps you to earn your bread, literature helps to keep your soul alive. So the body cannot live without either. The body cannot live without food. So you need language, and the body also cannot live without the soul. So both of them are equally important. And what we need to do is, we need to understand that literature and language are not the two opposite ends of a river. They are the river itself of the English language. So what stops us from doing good research in literature with hints of language in it? For example, if you're looking at feministic writing, you will see that the way women use language is very different from the way men use language. So even if you're looking at, a feministic writing, you can throw in the aspect of language in it. Similarly, you might be doing empirical research in language usage, acquisition, but you can also have a tinge of literature thrown into it. So it is my request that start understanding that they are not two separate watertight compartments. From here, I'm going to go to the next point, the concept of applied research. Now, there are two kinds of research. The one is called basic research, and the second one is applied research. So I'll be taking you through the differences in the two. When I'm talking about basic academic research, what it does, it gives you additional knowledge. You didn't know about a topic, you go ahead and do research on the topic, and you find new knowledge. This is your basic research. But what applied research does is that it identifies a solution, it identifies an existing problem and tries to find a solution to that problem. The second thing about basic research is that it discovers knowledge that was not known before. But what applied research does, it creates and innovates and finds solutions to existing problems. And after finding a solution, it goes into application to see if it is really solving the problem. When we're talking about basic research, the third difference is that basic research is mere academic. What I mean by mere academic is that what you publish, it stays within the pages of a journal article. It stays within the, within the four walls of a conference room, or within the hardbound copies of the black book of your thesis. It does not go beyond the pages into actual practical use. But when we're talking about applied research leads to practical use of the innovations that you've made, and you use it for the betterment of society. So what here I'm trying to make the point is that it is time that we bridge the gap between basic and applied research. Basic research is the starting point, but you do research and you're not putting it out for the world to use it, then your research is no good. So basic research has to be converted to applied research, and your findings will in fact bring some amount of relief to society, will be a blessing to society, will be a boon to society. Okay, so this is what I mean. But we need to move from basic research to applied research. Now, when I'm talking about applied research, you will see applied research looks at the present problems. And it looks at a solution which can be applied in the future to avert future problems. So the point here is that we need to stop looking at the past. The problems we have are in the present, and the solutions that we need are required now or to avert some disaster in the future. So the focus has to shift from basic research to applied research. The next point I'm going to make is that all these years we have been looking at monodisciplinary approach. For example, when I wanted to do my research, I wanted to do research on how people use language and what English language does for the confidence of a person. So there was an aspect of psychology in my topic, and then there was an aspect of English language usage. So I went to the psychology department, they refused me. I went to the sociology department, they also refused me. Ultimately, I had to come back to the English department and register myself. But I was stupid enough not to realize that I still could do an interdisciplinary research by unofficially taking a guide from some other department. But the students these days are smart enough, and they shouldn't be repeating the mistakes that we have done. You might be registered in the English department, but there is nothing to stop you from going and approaching an expert from the psychology department or from the history department and doing an interdisciplinary research. Now, when you're doing research in a specific discipline, what you're doing is you're having a tunnel vision. You're narrowing down your scope. But when you're doing interdisciplinary research, your scope, your canvas is a lot broader, and the possibilities are almost limitless. I'll give you one more example. During my times, we had this very distinct, separation between the science students and the art students. And my father is an engineer, and he was very upset when I chose to go into arts, because according to him, only the ones who are not mathematically or logically strong people would go into the arts stream. People who are smart and intelligent generally go into the science stream. But today, I'm glad to say that computer programmers are working with linguists like us. And today, if I train myself, I can use my linguistic skills and I can start coding as a computer programmer, because now is the time for interdisciplinary approach to solving problems. So today, if you are using Siri, it is because computer experts have been working with linguists to come up with something like Siri, or to come up with something like the Microsoft Assistant, Microsoft Assistant, the Apple Assistant. So this is where we need to change our thought process, that we'll not be doing research only in English. Combine English with history, combine English with psychology, with sociology. This is how the newer age research is happening. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is we need to understand the future of humanity. Anything you do in terms of language, whether it's literature or language in use, it is a reflection of the times in which it is written in, or in which it is used. For example, the previous generation, the way they used to communicate, the kind of language they used to use is very different from the way we use SMS language nowadays. So the language, the quality, the usage is changing. Even the kind of literature we are producing is changing. We have things like flash fiction, because today's reader does not have the patience to read maybe a 500-page novel. They would prefer maybe something which is 100-word long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through the past, the present, and the predicted future so that we can easily understand what are the newer areas of research that we need to delve into. So when we're talking about humanity, I was aware of the word humanism, okay, where it talks about the superiority of man, the intelligence of man. But I came across two other new terms, and it took me about 3 days of studying to understand these two new terms, and I'm going to be sharing them with you. Now, when we're talking about human beings, we measure human beings on two axes. In the horizontal axis, we talk about human beings and about their intellectual capability, how smart they are. In the vertical axis, we talk about the physicality of man, you know, how strong, how much endurance, okay, how much stamina, how much strength human beings have. So when I'm talking about the normal human being, if you see, it is intelligent. This is the 0, 0 starting point, so it is somewhat intelligent, and physically also it is somewhat strong, okay? But when we are talking about animals in comparison, you see, physically, they are a lot more than human beings. They are higher than human beings along the vertical axis. But when it comes to intellectual capacity, animals fall short, or they fall behind human beings, though some of the animals like dolphins and maybe chimpanzees are almost as smart as human beings. But when I'm talking about humans, these humans are the humans of the past generation, for example, the generation of my grandparents. But when we're talking about people of our generation, we are more than human beings. What we are called we are called as transhumans. Now, what do I mean by transhumans? This was a new term for me, or maybe it's a new term for many of you. Now, transhumans are human beings who increase their intellectual capacity with the help of technology. Now, I want to give you an example to explain what transhumans are. So, my mom's generation, I have seen that she could memorize anything between 30 to 35 phone numbers, landline numbers, because at that time we did not have cell phones. But if you talk about me, I know only 2 cell phone numbers by heart. If I need to use more numbers, what I do is I take out my smartphone. And my smartphone allows me to store more than 2,000 phone numbers at the time. My mom, with her brains, could remember 30 to 40 numbers. Me, with the assistance of technology, I can use, I can have access to 2,000 phone numbers. So my brain has shifted part of its workload to technology, and that makes me smarter, and at times it makes me stronger also. Okay, how? Let me give you an example of stronger. Suppose I have lost a limb, okay, and the doctors have given me a bionic limb. Now, the bionic limb that I have, the right hand that I have, is stronger and can lift more weight. So in terms of physical endurance also, transhumans are better with the use of technology. Now, you will see the word trans, which means across. So the transhumans are the transit people, and the humans are going to the third stage through the transhumans. So we are basically in transit, and what will happen in the future is humans will be post-humans. So from humans, right now, we people are in the preparation stage of becoming post-humans. Now, how do I define post-humans? The first thing to note is that post-humans are smarter than humans, smarter than transhumans. They're way smarter than any other creature in this world. And in terms of strength also, they're smarter than humans, stronger than humans, transhumans, even animals. So what defines post-humans? Post-humans will reach a stage where they're almost like immortals. Their lifespan might be anything between 200 to 300 years, because by the time, with the help of genetic engineering, we would have got rid of all physical diseases. We would have got rid of all weaknesses. Okay, we're superhumans. And what defines superhumans is the ability to control the forces of nature. See, humans cannot control the forces of nature. Even transhumans, we are not able to control the forces of nature. But a post-human will be able to change the speed of light. They can change their own speed of traveling. So post-humans will be able to go from the past. They can jump to the future. They can come back to the present. So they'll be capable of time travel. They'll be capable of teleporting. They'll be capable of telepathic communication. And this is not a fantastic future. It is going to happen. And this is why we need to understand the future of humanity. We need to change our thought process, because everything is going to change because the way we are evolving. This is part of evolution, and literature and language is not separate from evolution. So if I simplify through popular movies, I think here you'll be able to associate better with what I'm saying is that if you're talking about humanism, you know, man is supreme, superior, intellectually superior than any other being, then I think the character of Sherlock Holmes is the perfect example. He's terribly smart. He can do a lot of unique things because of his smartness, but physically he's not very strong. So he is the epitome of the human figure. Next, I'm going to show you the transhuman, and you can immediately recognize this picture as that of Iron Man. Now, Iron Man is an ordinary man like you and me, but because of that expensive suit that he wears, he's capable of tremendous feats, not only in terms of physical feats, but also intellectual feats. So that makes him a transhuman. This piece of technology, this red suit, is what takes him from being a mere human to a transhuman. Now, I was thinking of examples for a post-human, and the one that I could find that comes closest to a post-human is the character of Flash from Marvel Comics. Now, Flash, he was an ordinary human being, but he goes through an accident where he gets some chemical, spilled on himself. He goes through some genetic modification, and he becomes capable of, generating tremendous speed of running. That's why he's known as Flash. Because he can run faster than time, the speed of time, he can go in the past, he can go to the future, he can travel between the time zones. And this is what essentially a post-human will be able to do. He will be able to manipulate the forces of nature. Now you will ask me, why do we need to understand this? For that, I'll go to the next slide. So initially, when we're talking about literature, the focus was always on the author, the experiences of the author. But now, the author and his way of writing has changed. The author is not writing epics anymore. The author is not writing classics anymore. He is maybe using a word processor to write a 600-word short story, which is available online. So the quality of writing has changed. The temperament of the author has changed. So the research that you do also has to change. And we'll be moving from human to transhuman to the post-human. So there are a lot of authors who are futuristic in their writing. Okay, if you're talking about someone like, say, Arthur C. Clarke, he spoke about something which at his time people wouldn't even, couldn't imagine. But today it is a reality. Today space travel is a reality. Today the mission Mars is a reality. So things are not too far away when, here, this is Marvin Minsky. Now he is known as the father of artificial intelligence. He is the co-founder of the AI department of MIT, Massachusetts. Now he was asked, will robots inherit the earth? And he said, yes, but they'll be our children. So there is this eternal debate about how robots will take over the human species, but that cannot happen because we are creating robots. We are smarter than robots. But what will happen is that we will assimilate robots into our system. They will become a part of us. They'll be in symbiosis with us. So maybe we will give birth to robots in the future. So this is exactly where the world is heading towards. So the time for maybe, modernism, postmodernism, colonialism, post-colonialism is way past into the future. The world has moved on. It is time for us also to move on. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about some of the areas now which are worth looking into. Now, these are pretty much traditional areas in English literature, but there's still some scope in it. It's not completely exhausted. So the first one I'm going to be talking about is reinterpretation of epics and classics to suit the current sensibility. So you could go back to the Bhagavad Gita, you could go back to the Upanishads and reinterpret it according to the current sensibility. This is one good area of research. Next, we're going to be talking about identity. Now, a lot of focus goes into feministic writing, but now you will see we have these LGBT rights. We have the men who have again been marginalized. We have sexual identities. We have cultural, ideological identities. So this is one aspect that you can go into. The other aspect, which I personally find very interesting, is translation of regional work. Now, there are so many fantastic authors that I can never read because nobody is bothering to translate them. So a question arises in my mind. Am I happy with reading a poor translation or not reading the work at all? And I answer to myself that I'd rather read a poor translation than not know maybe what a Malayali author wants to say. So, these are areas of research which are surveyable. You can do surveys and you can do wonderful work in terms of, translation of regional works. And the last one here, it's a traditional area. Many of you are already into it, is comparative literature. Instead of looking at Black writing or Caribbean writing or Canadian writing, compare different types of writing, and what you have is comparative literature. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to be moving at the newer areas. This is where our interest lies because it is relatively unexplored. I did not say it's unexplored, but in India at least, it's relatively unexplored. The first one being global diffusion and travel trajectories. Now, with the amount of money that we have now in our pockets, boundaries have shrunk, we're able to travel, and a lot of travelogues are making appearances. So it's a good, avenue or good direction of research in today's times. The next one is eco-criticism. Now, this word has been around for quite some time. With the pandemic, suddenly you'll see there'll be a mushrooming. Already with the greenhouse effect and all, people were worried about the future of the earth. Now it has become even more so. This is an interesting area of research. This one I really love, this graphic novels, comics, and society. I remember getting thrown out of my classroom because I have often been caught reading comic books. But I'm glad to say that today, in many countries around the world, comic books are a staple part of this syllabi. And comic books have a lot to teach us because it deals with society, it deals with heroes, and it deals with anti-heroes. It's a very, very good area of research. And just to underline how well received comics are, you just have to see the number of movies DC or Marvel produces in a year and the kind of box office ratings they get. It just shows how much people love comics and graphic novels. The fourth one I'm going to be talking about is hypertext fiction. Very much like Wikipedia, you want to know more about a certain word which is underlined, you click on it, it takes you to a different page. So hypertext fiction is non-linear fiction. I have an example in the slides ahead. I'll explain with that. Next, we have microblogging. Gone are the days of blogging. Nobody has the patience to read a 3-page blog. People have moved from blogging to microblogging. Today on Twitter, you have short stories put up known as Twitterer. Okay, so I'll be giving examples of the last two types. So in the next slide here, this is an example of the difference between a linear story and a non-linear story with the help of hyperlink. So here the story says, a shaft of refracted daylight now lay across the hall. She stopped dead and stared at the hall table. On this lay a letter addressed to her. If you're reading on a book, what you do is you tap next, or if you're reading on your iPad, whatever, you go next to what the author wants to tell you. But the same story, if it is converted into hyperlink fiction, see 3 words here, words have been underlined. So she stopped dead and stared at the hall table. On this lay a letter. Now I can decide whether I want to go and read the letter, or I want to click on her, or I want to go and click on the daylight. So, I might land up at a different section of the story. You as a reader might opt to go into this hyperlink, and you'll end up at a different section of the story. So the way you read the story is decided by you, and hence it is known as non-linear fiction. This is really good, but this has started long time back. The world was using hypertext fiction in the 1980s and 1990s. But maybe right now in India, some of us are just hearing about it, getting a concept about it. Okay, the next one here, again, this is called interactive fiction. Now see, here, a picture is given and a description is given. Several small shoots poke out through the ground at your feet. Now, I have an option of putting in text here. Whatever text I put in will happen next. So for example, I want to take a look at the ball. So I use this word and I type it out here. Here is the cursor. Or I want to explore different paths, so I can go to north, south, east, west. So it's very similar to a video game that you have. And it lets you interact with the story, and it lets you choose what you want to do. You want to see the spiked ball, you can examine it, you can look at it, or you can wait and just see what the author will tell you if you just wait and not do anything. Okay, in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about locative fiction. Now, this is the rage. This is the latest development in terms of, hypertext fiction, in the sense that instead of hyperlinks, they have icons here. You're actually using your mobile device, or you're using your iPad, and you're actually seeing the entire story. And you can choose what you want to do, where you want to go. You want to go through the gate, you want to go on the right side, you want to go on the left side. What will happen is decided by you. So this is known as locative. You actually go to the location and you can be a part of the location. You can be sitting here in India and you can be visiting the concentration camps somewhere in Poland. Okay, so this is locative fiction. Let me give you an example, one more example. Look at this. This is the haunted planet, and these are ghosts walking around. So I point my device at a certain location, and I can actually see the ghosts around. I can interact with them. I can go east, I can go west. Here is another picture. See how locative fiction works. These arrow lets you navigate 360 degree, and these are the command buttons that allows you to go and read the story in the way you like and interact with the story. And the last picture here, see, it involves augmented reality, virtual reality. It involves GPS. So everything is involved in locative fiction. And see, you can see a fantastic creature here in your mobile, which is actually not there in reality. So this is where narrators have come to. So we have a lot of catching up to do in terms of research also. Next, I'm going to be talking about microblogging. I told you people are not interested in long stories anymore, and the new generation writer is also not trained in the art of writing long classic stories. So look at this. We have something like 6-word dribble drabble. We have sudden fiction, flash fiction, and this is just so much to explore. And the idea is that psychologically, what makes the newer generation more prone to maybe reading literature than going back to a classic and reading about it? The people who are smart, what they have done is they have taken the old classics and they have converted into tweets. They have taken all the works of Shakespeare and they have converted into tweets. What has happened is the newer generation who will never make the effort to go back and read Shakespeare because it's too boring for them is actually reading Shakespeare's work only because of the tweets that people have made an effort to make. So there's a whole lot of scope for research in terms of literature. Next, I'm going to look into language. Now, this is my domain. I could go on for hours and hours, but we have very limited time. So I'm just going to be touching on the various aspects. Now, applied linguistics. Language is living. Language is used every day. So it is any which ways applied research. The moment you get into language, it becomes applied research. Now, some of the topics here have fair scope. A lot of research has already been done, but still they afford some scope is psycholinguistics. How the brain learns language, how the brain processes language, and how the brain produces language. Okay, so if you're talking about motivation of learning a language, a research on motivation of language learning will come under psycholinguistics. Okay, things like multilingualism. In India, every child is a multilingual, right? So are Indian children more intelligent than people who are monolingual, maybe say an Australian child who speaks only Australian English? So these are areas of research. The second one is social linguistic, how language runs in tandem with society. And for example, in India, we were always big Anglophiles. We afford a greater prestige to the English language, and I have noticed people that they feel they are more smart and intelligent. They appear more smart and intelligent if they can speak good English. So a good area of research is, how we perceive the language in society, how the amount of money in your pocket helps you to learn a language better because of better exposure. All of these can be looked at. The third one is ethno-linguistics, that means culture and language. Today, because of globalization, we are talking to foreign clients, we are traveling, we are going out for studies. So this is intercultural communication. We have in ethno-linguistics, we have ethnocentricity. Now, what is ethnocentricity? Japanese people, you will notice, they are not very keen on learning the English language because they hold their language as the supreme language. But you come to India, we are more willing to learn the English language as compared to our own mother tongue. So, these are very interesting areas of research, that what in our mental makeup, what in our culture makes us so prone and greedy to learn English. Then we have historical linguistics, historical timeline, how language has changed over the ages. This is known as glottoclonology, the kind of we use have changed from, Old English to, Medieval English to modern English. We have dialects that have changed. We have lost languages which have resurfaced because of historical linguists. So very interesting areas of research, still a lot of scope. But my interest lies in this slide where I'm going to be talking about more futuristic areas. The first one being clinical linguistics. Now, clinical linguistics talks about disability in people in terms of learning and producing language. For example, people who are mutes, people who cannot talk, have aphasia, people who have hearing disability, people who have a processing disability, reading disability. This is clinical linguistics and how linguists are helping them to overcome these problems. Okay, so in clinical linguistics, you have something like a hand glove which reads your hand gestures and converts it to spoken language. So this is how much, what do you call it? Finding the word, how far we have gone into the future. The second one, we have forensic linguistics. So this is fantastic. How criminals are apprehended with the help of linguists. How people who are sending ransom notes are caught. How terrorists who are sending voice messages are caught. How murderers are caught because of fake suicide notes that they have written. This is all in the arena of forensic linguistics. And then we have computational linguistics, the best one of all. This is absolutely limitless. Siri is nothing now. Everybody is using Siri. You know, we have gone way beyond Siri of voice commands. You have automated essay checkers. You know, you have automated systems which interact with you. For example, if you call up the airline, there is no human being at the other side of the line talking to you. There's actually an automated, artificially intelligent computer which is talking to you, understanding your queries and giving your answers. So, you know, computational linguistics has gone ahead a lot, but what it's still working on is it cannot understand tonal variation. For example, if I give you a compliment by saying that, wow, you're looking so beautiful, you can make out the sincerity in my voice. But if I say, wow, oh, you're looking so beautiful, you can make out that I'm being insincere. The human is able to make out, the computer still is not able to make out tonal inflections, nor is the computer still in a condition to understand facial expressions. So these are the areas that right now linguists and computer specialists are working on. So in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about John Olson. See, he's one of the most leading experts in forensic linguistics. And let me just show you an example. This person, he killed his girlfriend, put a body in the garage and set fire to it. And to buy himself an alibi that he was, you know, in the house while all this thing happened, he took her cell phone and he typed through her cell phone as if she's still alive, while in fact she was dead. But the problem with this guy is that he does not put a space after comma. Whenever he types, his nature is he forgets to put the space, and this is how the linguist was, you know, John Olson was able to catch the criminal just by the way he uses commas. And there are so many cases, you know, where, you know, suicide notes have been taken to be fake. That means you murder someone, you write on behalf of that person, and you're caught. You know, the authentication of voices. There are so many times, you know, we are not able to figure out whether Osama bin Laden has sent this message or not. But due to, you know, forensic linguistics, due to voice matching and things like that, people have done wonders. Okay, next here we have Thomas and Naveed. These are very young students at MIT, and see, in terms of clinical linguistics, they have developed this glove. This glove can pick up your hand gestures and convert it into speech, and they are calling it the sign aloud, and they have won a fantastic prize for the invention, and they're just kids. Look at this one here. In terms of computational linguistics, researchers are now working on combining not just speech, but also recognizing facial expressions to interpret data. So this is how far the world has come. The world is going to move into the post-human era, so we also need to look at different topics. I have a few very detailed sessions on these topics. I would request all of you to visit my channel, which is called Tall Talks from a Short Lady, and this is how my channel looks. These are the past webinars, and these webinars are in great detail, so I'll be very happy if you people visit and subscribe. And here is my phone number. You can WhatsApp me if you have any queries, or you could also mail me, and with that I'll say thank you, and I'll come back to my slide, and what I'll do is I'll post the link to my channel, and if you really felt that my webinar was of any help, then please visit my channel, and I'll be very glad if you subscribe. So let me just post my link here. It will take you maybe 10 seconds to go in and have a look. And sir, I'm ready for questions if there are any.
Sure. First, I'll just unpin you. Just a minute. Just give me a
Sure,
second,
sure.
ma'am.
No hurry.
Yeah. So, yes, the presentation was really an all-encompassing presentation, and quite a challenging topic actually, identifying niche areas in research. And you focused on all the aspects in a given time of 15 minutes. Niche areas in literature, niche areas in language teaching and niche areas in linguistics. It's quite a rare and phenomenal blend to just cover the whole spectrum in a matter of 15 minutes. I know it's pretty challenging, but you did great justice to the topic. Thank you very much, ma'am. And you also gave examples that were really appropriate. Rather than a subjective talk, you just gave examples that are really objective. And most importantly, on linguistics, there were a lot of niche areas which I understood in terms of psycholinguistics, in terms of historical linguistics, forensic linguistics, and clinical linguistics, because a lot of research scholars are usually wondering what kind of niche areas can we explore in linguistics. So I think it would have dispelled all their myths in terms of identifying niche areas. So thank you once again, ma'am. Now, I'm sure that the participants will have a few questions. You can just post your questions in the chat box. So depending on the time, ma'am will take the questions. So I request the participants to please post your questions. Okay, ma'am. The first question is from Tanish. She asks, ma'am, can we do a PhD research on subtitles of videos?
Yes, definitely. I'm so surprised at such an interesting topic that you've thought of, and you can actually see the difference in the subtitling of old videos, movies to the current cartoons that we have nowadays. There's a whole lot of change in the texture of the language, in the presentation, in the brevity of presentation. So yes, it's a very interesting area. It's pretty new also. Look at things which other people will not think of, and your PhD should be good and unique. So yes, definitely you can look at it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So Monica is asking, kindly discuss the scope of indigenous studies in research.
Okay. I did not understand this question really. Can you unmute yourself and ask me personally so that maybe you can explain what you really want to know? Are you there, ma'am?
I'll just rephrase, ma'am. She wants you to kindly discuss the scope of indigenous studies in Indian literature.
Okay, so I understand the word indigenous, and I understand the word. There's a whole lot of indigenous works, and yes, definitely you can look at it. But again, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, that I really don't deal with English literature, so maybe I'm not the right person to answer you. But yes, definitely you can look into indigenous works, and they're worth because most of the time they do not come into the limelight. They do not get into the focus, and hence the work is not appreciated in the way they should be. There's a lot of talent hidden all around in Indian English literature in terms of indigenous production. So yes,
thank you. Thank you. Maybe we'll take a couple of questions. Dr. Sadiqul Hamid is asking, I want to know more about eco-criticism. They want you to explain more about eco-criticism.
Okay. Eco-criticism is not, again, my area of expertise, but what I understand of eco-criticism is that we have been abusing the word right, left, and center, and now the world is giving its backlash. So there's a lot of writing which started maybe 20 years back from now. Eco-criticism, we have been hearing this word in the last 2, 3, 5 years. But people, writers, futuristic writers have already been talking about the warning signs of the earth. The earth is mother to us. So if we do not treat the earth properly, so through different writings, they have brought about the importance of human beings respecting nature, living in harmony with nature. So this is basically what eco-criticism is about. And there are a lot of writers who have, woven the concept of love for nature and stop abusing nature into their stories. So it's basically a literary theory that is making the rounds in the last 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, ma'am. One final question. I'll take one more final question, ma'am. Ma'am, can you throw light on transhumanism and the scope for it in PhD research?
Okay, this is interesting. Transhuman is one who is assisted by technology. So today I can log into Twitter and I can write a 6-word story. Okay, Ernest Hemingway was the first one to write a 6-word story. Today, every other person is an author. Everybody writes, everybody publishes, everybody has a wider readership. So maybe you can do a survey kind of research on transhumanistic production of literature. So the chart I showed you about flash fiction, sudden fiction, literature, twill, all of these are a part of transhumanistic production, endeavors. So yes, you can look into it. Anything that is assisted by, I know of writers, authors in the past, they used to use the dictaphone to dictate, and then they used to type it out. Okay, in today's time, nobody uses a dictaphone, nobody uses a typewriter. So the way we write has also changed. The sentence construction has changed. The kind of words we use has changed. So, it's worth doing a comparison between, humanistic writing and transhumanistic productions of these times.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am, for completing it bang on time and within the stipulated time, covering all aspects of the niche areas in research. Thank you once again. We are indeed privileged to host you for this conference, and it's been quite a complete presentation. Thank you once